I think we don't talk nearly enough about how strange it is that we just walk around bleeding profusely 3 to 7 days a month and don't think anything of it at all.
Like, it's not like it's like a once a year, 2 day. Like, it's like I don't know. I get like sick like once or twice a year, like with a cold or with a flu or whatever. But then it's like I have my period for like a week at a time every 3 weeks. What are we talking about?
Welcome to Choose the Bear. I'm Kat Calvin, and today's guest is the incredibly funny, insightful, and horror movie scaredy cat, Alison Leiby. Alison is the author of an incredibly notorious one-woman show about abortion. She was a writer on Mrs. Maisel. She also is the co-host of the podcast where I get the plots of the scary movies that I'm too afraid to watch, called Ruined, and generally just a really fantastic and very funny person. And I was so lucky to get to speak to her. So I thought she would be the perfect person to start the new year with some laughter, some fun, some insight, and generally just with a great gal. So I hope you enjoy this episode. Please don't forget to like, subscribe, share, all the things. And here's my conversation with Alison. Hello all. This is so exciting. I'm here with someone who you probably know, but even if you don't, you know her work, and you've heard about her show, and we're going to get into all of it. I'm here with the wonderful comedian and writer, and I'm just like all around hilarious lady, Alison Leiby. Hello.
Well, thank you so much for having me. This is a blast already.
Yay. Well, I'm thrilled to have you. I've been so excited. I have way too many questions that we will not get to because it's like, oh, I want to ask her about everything.
Yes.
But before we start, I always like to let people introduce themselves. So tell us who you are and what you do.
Sure. I'm Alison. I am a New York-based comedian and writer and podcaster and anything else that falls under the umbrella that we have to live under now to be professionals who just I'm like comedy is what I do, like the methods of which are always changing. Yeah, and I think why many people know me and is I did an off-Broadway solo show that I wrote called Oh God, a show about abortion, which was a long stand-up show all about my experience having an abortion.
I think that's where a lot of people know you from. I, however, know you from Ruined because I am a scaredy cat, and the only way that I have experienced many horror shows is through you. So thank you for your service.
Yes, I absolutely. I would know nothing of the entire genre if it weren't for our podcast, where I get to hear the plots of horror movies told to me from my friend who absolutely loves them, and it does worry me how much she likes them.
Yeah, well, and it's funny because we have both experienced these movies in the same exact way, which is exactly. Your co-host telling us about them and me being like, see, that's why I didn't watch that.
That's exactly what I didn't never sleep again.
Exactly. And I love The Shining, like The Exorcist. Like there are some really scary things that I can watch, but then the number of trailers I see that I'm just like, I have nightmares from the trailer.
I think that it should be illegal to show R-rated horror trailers when the movie that it's a trailer like before is not a horror movie. Like there are some like scary, like you know, like the Scream franchise. I'm like, sure, like my life isn't gonna be ruined by seeing like a minute and a half of a teaser of like young hot people, and then it's like, Neve Campbell's back or whatever, you know, like that's not going to do it. But I've gone to the movies and been like, ooh, I hope we see good trailers. And then been like, this ruined my life. Like, I don't know.
I mean, it should be illegal to show Jordan Peele trailers without like signed consent.
Yes, you have to be seeing a Jordan.
That man has traumatized
you
me.
have to be seeing a horror movie to get horror trailers. And I'm sorry if that feels like it limits the genre, but like, I don't think a rom-com is like giving anybody nightmares, but I'm definitely having nightmare. I mean, maybe it is. It kind of is also in a different way.
Yes.
But I don't want to see a horror trailer.
The rom-coms are actually my worst nightmare, but I don't want to see trailers. Yes. But for everyone who's listening and is like, I don't know what these women are talking about, please tell us all about the podcast.
Sure. By now, maybe you get the sense, but it is a podcast I did with my good friend, brilliant writer, Hallie Kiefer. And she like loves horror. She's loved horror the whole time. We've known each other for like almost 15 years at this point. And she used to spoil, I'd be like, oh, she would see these movies before all of her other friends who like them. And she's like, oh, I just want to talk about this. I'm like, you could tell me everything because I'm never going to see it. And then we were like, oh, there's something here. Cause like, I was like a Wikipedia reader of like horror film. I was like, oh, what happens in Hereditary? You know, I do want to know. Everyone's talking about it, but I'm never going to watch it. So each episode we talk about a different movie that she like details excellently because she's a lover of the genre. And then I never have to see them, but I do know what's going on in the world of horror. So that's about as much as I can tolerate.
I did watch Hereditary and I regret it to this day. That was a terrible life decision. I don't know what I was. No, everyone was talking about.
That's the thing. I do have a couple of other. Like, I was like, I know better. I'm not doing this. I've gotten tricked before, but like, I do have a handful of friends who like are not horror people that saw it because it was such a cultural moment, and they're like, well, now I'll never see another scary movie. Like, that has closed the door for me. It was so scary.
Yeah. Although I will say, when I was studying for the bar, we had a movie night. And we watched, I think, Paranormal Activity. And all of these people lied to me because they were not my friends. And they were like, oh, it's not scary. It's just like a documentary. And I didn't sleep for like 2 weeks, but that was great because I studied so much because I couldn't
That
sleep.
is honestly an effective bar studying method. Like, also, like,
perfect.
My like heart rate's like through the roof when I'm scared and seeing a scary movie. So it would also just like, you'd be keyed up to be like, all right, let's focus. It's like taking an Adderall.
Yeah. It was, I should probably thank them for helping me pass the bar because I was like, I'm just going to study. But one of the things I like, and I think this plays into sort of a lot of the things we'll talk about your work, but there's so much. And one of the things I like about horror and sci-fi and fantasy, and I sort of always talk about the fact that I grew up reading sci-fi and fantasy. So I grew up reading books that always had girls as heroic protagonists.
Yeah, for sure.
Because sci-fi and fantasy really do. Yeah. And I think the same when you look at horror movies, they are so often about women, center women. They have women as heroes. Even if you look at the sort of horror adjacent, like Silence of the Lambs, right? Or like Longlegs, which I watched because I was like, I love Nick Cage, and I gotta say, it wasn't scary.
You know, that's a lot of people were like, it was Act 1 and 2 are really scary, but Act 3 is like they just don't land the plane in a way that like it just falls apart, and so it kind of undoes how scary the beginning felt.
Yeah,
which
100%
is a bummer.
And I did I watched it on a plane because I was like, well, I can't be too scared on a plane. And then I was like, what's it? But, but they all have these, like, there's more women. And I find, at least I've found, I'm curious if you have that, sort of the genres that are sort of fringy genres tend to have more women centered. And one of the things I like is that you guys have such an interesting sort of feminist and women-centered perspective to even how you talk about these movies. So I want to hear, like, what is your perspective on what's going on there?
I think there's two things happening just from my, experience of the genre and of other genres in general. I think the one thing is that, like, when you have a genre, like a genre that is very hardened in like horror is like a very narrow lane in comparison to like all, like it is a smaller lane, but it's because like, it's like, we're just trying to scare you. How many different ways can we make a scary movie? Like, I think like it requires the creativity of breaking outside of the patriarchy and like breaking outside of like other just like hegemonies where it's like, yeah, we can make 1 million mobster movies or whatever. And like, people always go back. But I think like for horror, it's like, seen it, what else? And I think it does kind of push. And I think other genre film genres do this too. But I think the other thing that like women in horror in particular is I think that like women, like we experience a lot of horror like physically all the time. I think also like other, like I think like trans people know this too, but like I think there's like a real body horror that happens just as existing as a woman that you get very well acquainted with very early in life, to the point that I'm like, I mean, like when you think about like menstruating, it's like we bleed every month and we're all just like annoyed about it. Instead of like, we're just like, ugh, I have to go to the store. Now I'm like, I think that there's a lot, and there, and like the concept of childbirth from early on, I feel is like a very horrific thing when you think, when you watch somebody become pregnant and then have a baby, you're like, wow, that's a lot's happening to your body. And I think that women, like, in addition to the social fears that we have of men, like we just are like, we're so keyed into horror that I think we are like important vessels when it comes to depicting it, which I think like, while both like women are off, like the concept of the final girl is both like victim and hero. I think she is the one who experiences, like, short of death, all of the worst stuff, sees all of the terror, sees all of the blood, watches everybody get killed over the course of a movie. But she is also our person who escapes this horror and lives on.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that that's like, that feels very like definitionally like female. Like that is like kind of like what it's like to move through the world as a woman for I believe a lot of women. So I think that those are the two things. It's like, it's the forced creativity of needing to break outside of paradigms that like traditional film and male filmmaker. And I think a lot of like women and non-binary and trans folks feel like pushed to the edges already in commercial art. So I feel like it's like, oh, I'll make a little horror movie if you won't let me write Jurassic Park, like, and I think so then those perspectives become the dominant, or what feels like a dominant voice in the genre. But again, we bleed all the time, and I think that's
really
important.
Interesting. I think it is. I think we don't talk nearly enough about how strange it is that we just walk around bleeding profusely 3 to 7 days a month and don't think anything of it at all.
Like, it's not like it's like a once a year, 2 day. Like it's like I don't know. I get like sick like once or twice a year, like with a cold or with a flu or whatever. But it's like. But then it's like I have my period for like a week at a time every 3 weeks. What are we talking about?
The funny thing is, so I and all of the women in my family have PCOS. Mm-hmm. So we very rarely have our periods. And we always have this joke in our family that like one box of tampons will last 10 years because it will. But then it's wild because when it happens to me, it's so shocking. Of course. Still, I'm 41 and I'm like, oh my God, I've had my period in a year and a half. And then I realized like, wait. And so I think for me, I feel the horror of it a little more.
Yeah.
Because it's like when you haven't had your period in a year and a half, it's like, God, I have to remember.
You're like, oh, there's a lot of
tampon. I have to like go, literally, I have to wipe the dust off of the tampon box.
That's so funny.
And like call my mom and be like, you wouldn't believe it. And then we're like, oh, did you exercise more this month? What happened? Like, it's such a weird thing. But it makes me think like, God, this is something that is supposed to happen every single month. And I think having that weird, like, shock of it happening every so often really reminds me of how weird it is.
For sure. Yeah. I completely could see that.
So one of the things too, and I think this makes sense, horror movies, one thing that I find really interesting about them from a filmmaking perspective is that they're so much cheaper to make usually, except for the big budget ones, than regular movies, but they can make a crap ton of money, right? Like, the people who made Blair Witch Project are probably trillionaires at this point. We're like you can spend very little money. They have a much higher ROI than any 100%. Other film genre. And so yes, you get a lot of folks who are out of the norm who make horror because they can't make anything else. And then we've seen a lot of directors who have these little horror movies, they make a ton of money, and that's how they are able to then break into mainstream film.
Exactly. Yes.
And so it opens the door to more non-traditional folks,
Absolutely.
Which I find really interesting.
Yeah, it really, it really is.
It is. And so one of the other things that I love is that we see a lot of horror that is social commentary, right? Like Swarm, which I thought was fantastic, about the Beyonce stan, Bad Hair, which as a Black woman who wears a weave, I was like, this one is great.
Yes.
And The Substance, which just made a lot of noise, Demi Moore's one, which was a horror movie about women
Absolutely.
aging. I thought of that when you were talking, because it makes so much sense that we get this kind of commentary and these stories from people who, like, no one's giving Black women a lot of money to direct films, to talk about hair and identity.
And I think it's also, oh my God, I just had a sentence and it completely disappeared out of my head as I was like thinking about it too much. Well, it's gone. I think that also like, horror is also like a really good vehicle for processing like actual like social issues. Yeah, I think it's very hard for non-marginalized people or people who like, or even just like, if something is outside, like I am not a trans person, so I don't know the trans experience and like how scary that could be from a firsthand experience. But if somebody makes a movie that uses horror tropes to kind of illustrate that, I think that that's like a really good way of bringing people in and saying like, hey, this is like how this can feel sometimes. It's really scary. And I think that when you see women, queer people, people of color, like disabled people, trans people, like using the genre to kind of elucidate like real everyday systemic and social horrors that they experience. Like I think it is like a very effective, like, I mean, we look at Get Out and like, I think for white Americans, you're like, yes, I obviously have known that racism in this country is a huge problem the whole time. But like, I think it did a really nice job of like turning the screws to like, be like, this is how this feels. It's a horror movie. And I think that is like a really cool thing. Like, you know, comedy and satire can do it too, but I think horror can really, really do it in a way that people like, you can't ignore it anymore. And I think that, and still have it be a compelling movie without that commentary too. Like a horror, like if you're scared, whether you can connect the dots or not.
Exactly. I also find it interesting how perspectives can change. When I was younger and I saw The Shining, I was like, Jack is the bad guy. And then when I got older and I became a writer, I was like, Wendy is the bad guy. The audacity of asking how the writing is going. You got everything
torture.
You deserve.
Absolute torture.
I'm coming after you with a bat too. So you guys, I think you just had your 5th anniversary of the podcast.
I think like,
congratulations.
I think it's like sometime this week technically is like I forget the exact date, but it's we knew it was end of August is the 5 year. It's been 5 years, and you know, it was a year of or two of talking about it and developing it and kind of getting it off the ground. And you know, Hallie and I talked about it for a year or two, but like, so it's been, for us, we're like, I don't know, a decade, but like it's been out in the world. We launched it in 2020 and I feel like everybody was like, yeah, I understand horror now. We're living in it.
Or I'm at home and I have nothing to do, but I'm not going to watch this, but I can listen to it while I'm doing something else.
Exactly. Yeah. I feel like a lot of podcasts took off as people were confronted with doing the dishes all day.
Yes, exactly. But one of the things I love is how great your co-host dynamics are. And I feel like they've just gotten, better and better. And you guys clearly just have such a great friendship. And even the concept of like, this is the thing I love, that you could not be less interested, but I'm going to let you tell me about it. And then we're both going to get something out of it. So what have you learned about collaboration and friendship while making the pod?
I think it's been really interesting because in all of my other kind of like performing experience, like I've been doing stand-up for over 15 years. It's so like, I'm the star, I'm the center, I'm Carrie, like like you are the solo performer and therefore you are responsible for the entire performance. And doing a podcast like this, where it is the two of us every week and that there isn't a rotating in guest or anything, like it's just us like learning that like give and take and being like, I for so long was like stressed out early on when we started. I was like, not that I needed to talk more, but I was afraid that I wasn't talking. I was like, oh, I feel like you're talking so much and I'm not talking at all, or you're doing so much work and I'm not. And it's like, I think there's like I like really wrote off like my role in the podcast for a while. And I was like, well, anybody could fill this role, but it's like, no, because like I know Hallie and I feel like being able to like, I know her so well that I know like how to interrupt her and like how what kinds of questions to ask that'll get us into a place where we have something fun to discuss. Because I think she's so good. Like we both really found the lane of things that we're good at in this specific snapshot of a project. And I feel like it's been very helpful for me to be like, oh, somebody else can lead. Oh, like it's okay to sit back every once in a while, but then like also knowing, like, you know, forcing myself to also like speak up and ask more questions in the middle and not feel like, oh no, I'm going to derail this whole thing. And no, I should say this thing that I would like to say, which is a lesson I also had to like really learn in writers' rooms early on. And so like, I think that these are like collaboration is a long game. And I think like, you know, things go through phases. And I think we also learned a lot about just like each other's workflows and like how, like, this is the first time she and I have done something like this. So we both have learned a lot, all like positive, like all very, there's no like, oh my God, they almost fell apart. Like, but like, it's been really like helpful, and like for it to not be a big group, that it's just like the two of us. It's like, oh, we really like learned to speak the same language and like have a nice understanding of each other, and learn a lot from each other's like comedic sensibilities and our storytelling sensibilities. And I think it's just been like a really like, you know, exclusively positive experience to do it with her. Yeah, she's the best.
Amazing. I love that. We talk a lot on this show about the importance of friendship, and particularly as more and more people and more women are choosing to be single and to be child-free, that those friendships and community matter so much.
Yeah.
And so having examples like yours are so great, because like it's a thing that we just have to prioritize so much more.
And I think it's also taught me that like, I think a lot of us think about like all relationships, like professional, romantic, friendship. I'm always like, we have to like the same things. Like we have, like, I think about like when I think about like having a partner, I'm always like, well, I hope I can find a guy who likes my cat as much as I do. I don't know. Like, I mean, no, he will have to be in love with my cat because I am. But like, it's like, oh, like we like the same music or we don't like the same music, and will that work? And it's like, oh, it actually doesn't matter. Like Hallie and I, like our comedy taste is the same, but it's like overall, like Hallie loves horror movies and I like really don't. Like like people are like, oh, has this podcast made you want to like explore the genre more? I'm like, no, it is 100% shut the door for me. I do not want to see 98% of these films. But I think it like is a nice lesson, and like you don't have to be like exactly the same to have a nice relationship and to connect really deeply. And I think it's nice, especially in looking at like what it means to build community outside of the like nuclear family, and being like, oh, it doesn't have to be a million people that look like me. In fact, it's much better if it's people who are not just like me, because then we can complement each other and fill in those holes. Like obviously professionally, that's what we're doing, but like also just like personally, we do that for each other, Hallie and I. So I feel like it's been a really nice lesson in like, you don't have to have the same like taste in interests to have like a really like strong bond with somebody, which was a good like life lesson for me, just like thinking about navigating the world.
No, 100%. And you learn so much more.
For sure.
Right? You never would have known. You would have only known the Wikipedia plots for half of these movies.
And they don't hold a candle to Hallie's retellings.
They do not. They do not. So speaking of writers' rooms, another way people may know you is that you wrote for a tiny little unknown show that no one's ever heard of called The Marvelous Mr. Maisel. Yes. Mrs. Maisel. There was a Mr. We don't like him. But I, you know, obviously it's just a great show, but also I feel like it is a show that is so relevant around the conversations we have at Choose the Bear, but just conversations that we're having right now about, you know, one of the things that I say a lot is, you know, we all at some point have been single. And there's a high likelihood that if you are not single now, you will be single again. And so, you know, stop like ragging on single women. You've all been one and you're all going to be one again. But also, you know, like it's so important that we learn who we are while we are single, because it'll help you not be single if you don't want to, but B, because you don't have to go on this self-discovery trip, right? And Mrs. Maisel does, you know, she's married and then he leaves, and then she just has like ovaries of steel and is like, I'm going to go into this totally male-dominated field, which is still male-dominated.
If anything, it's kind of skewing more male again than it has in decades. which is shocking.
Right, exactly. And so I'm always like, this show, it's only, I mean, it's really sad, but it's only getting more relevant,
Yeah.
but also, there's so much that women can learn from this story. So can you, for anyone who hasn't seen the show, give maybe just like a super brief overview, but then talk about sort of that perspective?
Yeah, and I didn't work on seasons 1 and 2. I had seen the pilot when they were still developing it, and had met with them and ended up not working there until season 3. But it is if you don't know the show, I guess you don't have Amazon or television. I feel like it's like the one thing most people know me for.
Yes.
And I'm always like, I do other stuff, and they're like, Maisel, and I'm like, okay. A woman who finds out her husband's sleeping with his secretary. They've got 2 kids, live on the Upper West Side, and he's trying to be a comedian for some reason, despite being humorless. And he split. I forget who leaves who. Does he leave? Whatever. They split up. She gets divorced in the 50s, 60s, like a time when that was like way less common. And instead of, and she decides to go off and she's going to pursue this career in comedy that he kind of had the desire to. And I think like what I always really connected with when I saw like early seasons of the show, and then like obviously like when I was writing on it like from 3 on, I felt very like, I like that the lesson is like that you like, if something didn't work out, like go find something different. Like don't just like, she could have easily just found another man who was a company man at some other company and married him and had another kid, and like, but it's like, oh, but that didn't satisfy her. And like whether whoever's fault the end of this relationship was, like ultimately like she wasn't happy in it either. And I think like the good lesson is like, go do something different and see if that makes you happier. And that like, it's obviously like we're talking about ages and social norms of 60 years ago when we talk about this show, but like she was older. That was like to be getting divorced and to start a career at all, let alone this career in stand-up comedy and then television, where it's like all men who are hanging out in nightclubs, and like it's like there is no too late to start again and to like try something new, which I think is like a lesson that unfortunately we all need to keep in front of mind right now, as like every industry crumbles behind us, and things change at this kind of rate where you're like, wait, like even just in general, like I'm 41, like the world I was promised as a young person doesn't exist and won't. And it's like, okay, how do I then keep being ready to make a big change if I have to? Like what does that look like, whether that's in your relationship or in your professional life and where you live, like whatever. I think that was always like what I thought was like a very cool message of the show, is like, yeah, okay, she was like in her late 20s or maybe she was 30 or something like that, and it's like, yeah, and that's a perfectly fine time to start something new and scary. And I think that's really, and if anything, you're like more equipped to start something new and scary when you've seen some other shit. So that to me was like a big kind of like unspoken lesson. Like I think like there were like other things that like more feminist, like women can do comedy, and it's like, yeah, I know, but like I think that kind of like secondary, like it's never too late to start. It's never too late to start over. And like, and don't repeat the mistakes that left you miserable the first time, are all like the really important, like timeless lessons that show was kind of pushing and throughout.
Yeah. No, I think so. I think that's what makes it continuously relevant. And for me too, one of the things that that I hear all the time, sort of from like the kids, about like not wanting to try something new, not wanting to be cringe, or when you're older and it's like, I don't want to try something new, I don't want to be bad at it. And she wasn't a brilliant comedian from right out the gate. You're never going to be when you start something, but you're never too old to start something, be bad at it, and learn to be good at it.
Yes.
And grow from that. Right. And I think that's another thing that's like so relevant in that story.
Yeah. And that the satisfying thing for her was learning how to do it. I think. And that's like a lesson I want to drill into every person who uses ChatGPT's head and thinks AI is the future of art or of anything aside from destroying the planet. I'm very anti-AI. But like,
well, I will say he does help me budget, which is
well,
useful.
that, I mean, like, okay, well, now I'm in because I need somebody to help me do that.
Yeah.
But like, I think like, just because also like I do stand up comedy, so I know this world and what it feels like. It sucks to be bad at it, and it's embarrassing, and it hurts, and it's cringe or whatever. But it is like so much less those things as how good it feels when you're learning and it's working. Like when you like the first time you get like that big pop of laughter, the first time that you were like, this joke is never going to work, and you finally figure it out. When you feel comfortable on stage after being very stiff, like these are things that like make it enjoyable, and they're why you are good, because you were bad. Like you have to be bad before you're good. That's how like learning works. And I think
So
that
everything
like
works.
learning something new sucks at the beginning and then only gets more fun. And that's like as opposed to being like, whoa, am I like the greatest basketball player of all time because I hit like 1 3-pointer from the half, like
Yes.
once, and then it's like, well, I'm amazing. Like if you think like I'm amazing and I figured this out, and then like you really, it's like, no, I don't. I did one thing. Like I think that the focus on like, because so much of the show does take place as she's coming up and not after her fame, which we all knew would be coming from the first episode.
Yep. Yep. Yeah. No, it is. And it's, I mean, I think again, just thinking about being to be single, a child free, and we have so much more time. And so we can engage in more things. And the older we get, learn more things. And try new things. You know, I have an aunt who, she's everyone's favorite aunt because she's the one who never got married and had kids. That's always a favorite aunt. And she's retiring from teaching in like this year or next year, but she's only 60. And so now she's like, what am I going to do next? Right. And, you know, my grandmother's 94 and still kicking. So she knows I may have another 30, 35, 40 years.
Act 3.
And she gets to choose a whole other thing. Right.
Yeah.
You know, I'm also 41. I just started a new hobby this summer. I'm horrible at it.
If you could.
Eventually, golf.
Well, that's so
I'm the worst
fun.
golfer who ever.
It's nice to be
outside. But it's so fun. I love it so much. Exactly. I get to be outside every day. It's so, the skirts and the outfits are the best. You get to drive a golf cart. I mean, golf is the best. Am I horrible? Yes. Am I constantly just embarrassing myself by either hitting the ball terribly or missing it entirely? Absolutely. Am I going to spend the next 30 years trying to learn and get better? Yeah. And that's like what's fun. I just laugh when I miss a shot. I'm like, who cares? I've been playing for 2 months.
You're not on the PGA
I
Tour.
Suck, right? But
it's
like,
fine.
Exactly. But when I hit a great shot, I'm like, am I Nelly Korda? I think I'm the greatest golfer who ever lived. Am I a prodigy? Yes. Right? And then the universe, the next shot is like, no, you are not. But like, we have so much time. And I have friends who, you know, are enjoying that and trying new things. Yes. But then I have friends who it's like, they're really afraid to try new things, but they've got nothing but time. And it's like, bring that joy and excitement and adventure into your life. You have the privilege of being able to do that.
Yeah, it really is like wonderful. And it like connects, like this is like slightly, you know, askew from what you're saying. But also I saw this TikTok like years ago from this woman that I really like it really stuck in my brain of like, child-free people are really important in a society that has children because they have the bandwidth to teach and like have experiences that parents don't, to like to be and be accessible to children. Like, yes, I do stand-up comedy and I write and do all this stuff. And if one of my friends who does not do this job and has something more stable, not that there are not people who do this job and have kids, but like wanted to talk about comedy and learn about comedy, like I think parenting, like having a job and parenting, like you probably don't have a lot of room for hobbies, for artistic pursuits, for those things. And it's like you as a child-free person who does things become this kind of resource to children, because parents will not always be able, if everybody is a parent, like nobody has a hobby. Like,
yep. I'm well, they have hobbies they don't get to engage in.
Exactly.
Well, no, the moms have hobbies that they don't get into engage in.
The dads are like,
because there are a lot of dads
golfers
on the golf course every Saturday. Exactly. And I'm like, where are your children? So actually, speaking of that sort of back and forth, I watched an interview you did with a mom who was talking about what I see as really great and affirming child-free social media content, which she experienced as rage bait. And I died laughing and then unpaused, and you handled it really, really well. But it really made me think about this. There's this push and pull, right? And again, like, everyone didn't have children before you had them.
Exactly.
Right?
You were child free.
But there's this whole
until you weren't.
You were child free until you weren't. But there's this whole battle, and you, as a woman who talks about this a lot, is very public, and also wrote a very iconic and legendary one-woman show about having an abortion. Yeah. You've got to find yourself in the middle of this mom versus mom, non-mom debate all of the time.
All the time. And I feel like every 6 months it flares up on TikTok. Like, I'm not very on TikTok. I mean, I'm on TikTok watching all day, but like, I don't post content, and I don't have like, I'm just like lurking. But it does seem like we will never shake this way that we pit women against each other over this one specific thing. And I just am, in my show, I talked about it a bit where I was like, why are we making mothers hate non-mothers when like men are doing these terrible things
when men are
all the time?
Right.
Like, I don't resent I have lots of friends who have kids, and I have lots of friends who are child free by choice. And I have some friends who I think want kids and don't. Like, I think I know I have the spectrum of people in my life who, and they're different, like, relationships to parenting. And it's just like, I really, a lot of the moms I know are like, wow, you really did something with this decision. Wow, I should have thought about what you're doing before. Like, no, I think all my friends are very happily parenting. But there are a lot of them who also, like, they do kind of take for granted that child-free people have the same value in society as people who are parents, and that we should not be forced to bend to make your life easier all the time, just because we don't have children. We are not support systems for you exclusively, and we also require our own support systems that we understand that you are raising children to hopefully be good members of society, and we want that. But we also, as friends, are like looking for it to be a two-way street. And I think like where a lot of mothers get very caught up is us like claiming that and being like, hey, like sometimes I need help. Sometimes I can't help you. Sometimes like I feel undervalued as a human being by you or by other people who are parents. And I think that like, I wish if I could give one message to women who are mothers, it's like, we're not calling you out. Like, that is not an attack. It is a request for being seen.
Exactly.
And I think as women, we should all like understand that desire to be seen and that desire to be respected and valued, because we have all been undervalued just by being women in society. And I think that that's what always like really bums me out about seeing these arguments. And I get, I think when parents, one of the big things I always like, I love child-free people on TikTok saying, and what I get so frustrated by parents saying is like, when a child-free person's like, look what I get to do. Like the conversation we just had where you're like, I'm picking up a new hobby, and it's great because I have all the time in the world to do this hobby. And you know that there's a woman out there who has kids who's like, well, I golf. I can golf. And it's like, I'm not saying you can't. I'm just excited that I can. And I am doing it on the terms that I would like to do it, which is I don't have to arrange childcare. My body has not been pregnant and given birth, and thus might be slightly different and have different capabilities. Like if I want to play 9 hours or if I want to play 1, like I don't have to change anything else in my life around that. And I think it comes up with travel a lot. And it's not child-free people saying like, I can and you can't. That's not what this is about. But we're saying like, oh, here's something that I do get that I'm excited about, in the same way that I hope you are excited about a choice that you made to have a family. And like, that's where it's like, I wish there was a way to like communicate that it's not antagonistic when we are excited about, or even like seemingly bragging about things we can do and have and what our life looks like. Cause it's just being like, this is a cool life too. And I think that I should be respected for making these choices and being a part of society.
Yeah. Right. Well, and I think that one thing that is missed by moms a lot with this content is that you are part of the group of women in society who are doing what society expected. And so you don't have to deal with all of the friction and the controversy, etc. So you don't need, and yet you still have just all the mom content in the world. So you do still need that community, but like child-free women also need that community. And also maybe if you had examples of women, because, and you talked about this in that interview, that there you get so many young women who are like, and we see this constantly on social media, I don't think I want to have kids, but are there any women who are over 40 or 50 who can tell me if I'm going to regret it, because everyone in my life is going to? And what we want, so the whole reason I do this is for those young women to know, no, you have a choice and you can have an awesome life.
Yes.
And also, if you think about it, all the women you love the most and had the most fun with, they were your child-free aunties, right? And like, you can do that, but like, it's such an important affirming thing. And it's not about you.
Right. It's not about you. Like, and it's important to show that both positions, parenting and not parenting, and being child-free, both of them have pros and cons. Like, both of them, you sacrifice things and you get things. And like, those things are different. And like what a lot of child-free people are trying, especially women are trying, men don't have to justify a single choice they make.
Men do not have this issue, right?
But like what child-free,
also they could be 95 and have a kid.
And they're like, I'm one day I want to have a family, and you're like, okay. Right. But I feel like a lot of what child-free content is being like, everybody focuses on the negatives of what our life looks like, the things we don't have, and we're aware of the things we don't have. We're aware that we're treated differently by society by not being mothers. Like, we know that, like, also, like, of course, if you want it, like I've never really wanted kids and I don't want them. And there was no part of me that's like, well, it would be, I'm like, I don't want kids. But I'm like, I'm sure there are great elements to, like, you see a big family and you're like, that's really nice. I bet it's really fun when everybody's together and you have like whatever. But it's like, but those people don't have the freedoms that I have in other corners of my life. And like what I'm saying, like what we're saying is like, I may not have the things that you think are good, but I do have these things that are good. And that's the trade-off I've decided to make. You made a different trade-off. You decided you wanted children at the sacrifice of some freedoms. And that's fine. But both have trade-offs. And both I think that's okay. Like all it is trying to show like what are you getting for this trade-off as a child-free person?
Yep. Exactly. One of the things I love about sort of having this conversation on social media is how many older women are saying like, don't get married, don't have kids, which was the message I got my whole life. But I recently moved from LA to this very small, very conservative, very rural town in Arizona. And it's mostly retirees and me, and I have like 2 friends my age now. But, I did this like 6-month Master Gardener program, and it was me and a bunch of retired. It was Wednesdays during the day for 6 months. It was only retired people and the one girl in town who works from home. And I was like, oh, I don't know, like how these like older ladies are going to like react to the fact that, I'm like single and I don't have kids. I'm just out here on my own or whatever. And 100% of them, when they found out that I was not married and didn't have kids, were like, good for you. Stay single. 100% of these ladies who have all been married for 85 years. I've only had older, and then it's great because you see all these videos of these, young women interviewing their moms and their grandmas, and they're all like, stay single, and it's you're getting this like really great positive messaging from older women.
I think it's so nice because it's like if I could diagnose what it is, it's that like they did enjoy their life of raising children and being and living with a partner or whatever. But I think like in whatever phase of life this is, they're seeing like, oh, it could have also just been this. It could have just been like doing the things I like when you're no longer kind of tethered to raising a family, you can start doing the things that we have the opportunity to do now. And it's like, I could totally see like whenever I see like interviews with older women who are like, no, don't do it. Just enjoy your life and enjoy yourself. Like, I think like, it's not saying being a parent and wife is terrible. I think it's saying like, oh, I really like what I'm doing now. And it seems like you could just do it now.
Yeah. Well, and I think I really get the feeling that most of them are not saying being a parent is terrible,
Yeah.
but most of them are saying don't let a man in your house.
Yes. Yeah. I know. I look around, I'm always like, a man can't come here. Like, he can't be here long term.
Look, Whoopi Goldberg is right.
Yes.
I don't want somebody
I don't
living
want
in my
somebody
house.
living in my house. One of my favorite
I
quotes.
don't want exactly. So you wrote this legendary one woman show that we've talked about. Got a show about abortion, which also great title. Which again, I think particularly right now, relevant again. You should bring it back.
I know.
Put it on
Everybody's
HBO.
like, it's kind of in the. And I'm like, yeah, I know. I guess it hasn't stopped being relevant, but boy, every day it feels a little bit more.
It does. Well, and it's interesting because last season I had a husband and wife team of researchers on, and they had done some research showing that the number of, so something like, I think they said 35% of adults in America are child free. And that is like steadily growing, but they saw unbelievable growth after Dobbs when they were like suddenly like the number of people choosing to be child free, the number of people choosing to have vasectomies and tubal ligations, et cetera, just absolutely exploded, which shocker, right? Like nobody's surprised, but you know, we're seeing this reaction to people like just affirmatively making the choice, and not just here. I mean, obviously, every country in the world is freaking out about the like reduced birth rate. And meanwhile, I'm like, yes,
Japan
save the whales, like, stop having children,
running out of people, and we're all like, good.
I know. And then this guy just married like his AI girlfriend, and I was like, all right. You guys already had men marrying pillows. Can we stop? Can we stop? Japan is always a little too ahead of the curve. But again, so can you tell folks first of all just what your show is about? But also I'm just so interested in how over the years, because you've been doing female-centered comedy for a long time, you did the show, you did Maisel, all these things. How have you seen the landscape change, the relevance of your work change, and the reaction?
For sure. I mean, like, I've been doing stand-up for 15 years, and like, I remember when I started, like, I was like, what I like to talk about is stuff that I experience. Like, I don't do a character on stage. I don't have like a not a gimmick, but like a style that kind of takes me outside of reality. I really just talk about like how things affect me, which is how a lot of people do comedy. And like, I am a woman. So therefore, those experiences are always filtered through the fact that I'm a woman. My interests are things that other women like. And I just remember early on, I was like, I'm writing about women's magazines. I'm writing about skincare. I'm writing about buying jeans. I'm writing about like obviously like when we talk about relationships, that's like one thing, but like women's interests as a concept, like bridal showers, nail polish, like these are, and I'm like, it's not because I'm like the girliest girl. But I'm like, these are the things I have thoughts about because these are the things that are in my world. So I've always really talked about those kinds of topics in my stand-up. And I've seen lots of people talk about abortion on stage. It's mostly been men, and abortion has been some kind of punchline to feel edgy. And I always clocked that I didn't, if anybody had like said they had an abortion, it was always like, either it was just a joke or it was like, kind of like, and I'm a piece of shit, and you get like, or it gets glossed over so fast. And I was like, okay, interesting. And then in 2019, I did get unwantedly pregnant, and I was like, oh, I need to do something about this. And I had an abortion, and like, I had never had one before. I have friends who have had them, but they don't really talk about them if they have. I'm sure I had a lot of friends after I started doing the show that then told me they had had one that had never told me. And I was just like, when I went through the experience, I wasn't like, wow, this was hilarious. Though elements of it were. But I had the one of the best case scenarios of a very simple, uncomplicated, both emotionally, physically, financially, like all of it was, I'm in a position of deep privilege when it comes to this kind of access and care. And so I went through that and I was like, oh, no one tells this story. Like I realized, I was like, oh, I can't believe how easy it was. Like even me, who was like pro-choice forever, raised in a pro-choice household, I was still raised to be afraid of abortion by culture and be afraid of abortion by the way sex ed was taught and things like that. So like I was like, oh, it's going to be a really big deal. It's going to be really intense. And I was like, I have had dentist appointments that were like 50 times more intense in every way. I had a root canal the month before, and I was like, that was way worse. It was more expensive. It was more emotionally draining. But I like really was like shocked by the ease. And I was like, oh, wouldn't it be interesting to get on stage and go through, what are you doing? Sorry. That's my cat eating something he shouldn't, I'm sure.
Cat moment.
Yeah, a little cat moment. Oh, are you eating a feather? You can have it. From his toy, not like from a boa I have. And I was just like, oh, it'd be interesting to go through so I wrote like just like 5 minutes of like of jokes about having an abortion where like the punchline was not I'm bad or like whatever, kind of the sentiment that I feel like I so often saw on stage. And then I just kind of like, I had like 5 minutes and then I added another couple minutes to it as overtime. I was just like working out. I was like, wait, I think there's something bigger happening here. Like, what if I spent an hour getting deep on this topic? And like, and I had other old jokes that are many years old that made their way into the show, talking about birth control, talking about periods, talking about these things that like, it's all part of a big piece. And so I developed this whole like hour-long show where I went and like the kind of joke of, it used to be called an hour, oh God, an hour about abortion, but we changed it because it was in a theater and hour is very stand up. And I was like, wait, abortion isn't the problem word in this title. Which just like evidence to how wonderful my producers are. That like, the joke of it is it's an hour-long plus show, but I only really talk about the experience of an abortion for about how long it took, which is like 8 minutes. And most of it is kind of discussing motherhood, discussing the experience of being a woman, like physically, the experience of being a woman socially, kind of the weird way, and then just all stand-up bits about that stuff. And it really like I was like, it's the hardest thing I've done, but also the greatest thing I've done. And I'm like, oh, this like sums up me and my experience for the last 41 years, not just for, you know, the day that I was having my abortion. I'm like, oh, this is something that I really connect to. And what I really loved when it was up and running and people would message me after the show or send notes to me. And it would always be like, wow, thank you for like showing and reflecting the experience I had, because like a big piece of it is like I felt bad that I didn't feel bad about it, because we're taught like, well, if you have one, it's like even just the way that the left sometimes talks about abortion being safe, legal, and rare, as if like, well, it's like, oh, so this was rare and I should feel bad because you're not supposed to do this. Like there's all this messaging where it's like, oh, it shouldn't be like that, and you should not be forced to feel a way about something that happens to your body if that's not how you're feeling. And I felt really like honored that so many people would connected to me on that, and were like, it's been really like validating to hear somebody say that they felt the way I did, because I've felt the shame not of having an abortion, but of not being ashamed of my abortion. And I thought that was such an interesting thing for people to hook onto. I think most of the time when we see abortion depicted in pop culture, it is the sad worst case scenarios. It is the gut wrenching, like, do I, don't I, do I, don't I? It is the inaccessible care that people are systemically barred from getting. Like, it's all the bad things. And it's like, those are all real and really important and should be shown and dealt with in culture. But this is also a very common experience of abortion. And I thought it was very kind of exciting to get to show that. And it really, the success of the show, I think, speaks to the fact that we need lots of stories about how this is, and not just the saddest one you've ever heard.
Yes. Well, and you know, I think that you bring up a good point. You know, one of the problems that we have with politics on the left, and that this was very visible in this last election, is that the only way they can talk about women who don't have children is women who are really, really sad that they don't have children and want IVF. That is the only conversation the left can have about women who don't have children. And if you get an abortion, you're one of the few. It's devastating. It's your right, and you should be able to make your own body's decisions, but you're going to be sad about it for the rest of your life. And it's not a thing we really like either. And you know, I was like, Kamala is a, you know, child-free woman. She became a stepmom later in life, which is part of the reason she's such a badass. And she's, you know, but we can't celebrate it as she can. You know, she has to have a real be mommy and whatever. Narrative. She had to have.
around it.
Yes, very specific, because we can't have a conversation on any side of the aisle about the fact that women can just be women who are whole and fine on their own.
Right.
You're either a mom or you're really devastated about it.
Yes. Yeah. In the show, I talk about this a little bit where I'm like, like women are mothers or not mothers. And like, you're very aware of who is and isn't. Like it's always very clear. Like my friend has a joke about it where she like names female celebrities and asks the audience to yell out if they have kids or not. And like they nail all of them. And then she names male celebrities. Yep. And it's like, no one knows if they have kids. No one has any idea if they're fathers, if they're not fathers, if they're but we're so hung up on women's role as either mother or not mother that it's like the first thing we know about every woman.
Yes. Well, and I think that Jennifer Aniston, who I think this was really pitted on more than most, has done this really amazing job. First of all, looking wildly hot. The older she gets, the hotter she is, which it must be the water. She's drinking all that smart water. But like, I feel like she is someone, and maybe it's because we're around the same age, so she's been a very big part of our pop culture for our, whole lives of like, and then because there was like Brad and like her and then Angelina who had 85 kids, and so people have to put it against each other, and you could just see so much like the total focus on her to where she can't even really have that much of a career without people talking about it. Does she have kids? Is she going to have kids? Is that a baby bump? Blah, 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 blah. Yes. And it's obsessive. And yet there's no sort of political space that's very like open and free for women to be like, I just want to be just a person.
And it's like, also, it's always, I always go back to like, she's never once said she wanted kids. Like not once. Like she never said she was upset that she didn't have them. That was something that like everybody else put on her. I remember seeing an interview with her once. It was when she was with Brad, I think. It was like before all the Brangelina stuff. And someone like came up to, there was like speculation that she was pregnant. And I get like two very famous people, like people are just like, what's going to happen? But like somebody came up to her at a restaurant and they were like, I read that you're expecting. Are you having a kid? And she was like, I'm literally drinking sake and smoking a cigarette. Like, no, I'm not. Like, why would you like just like truly like the definition of somebody who is not pregnant, eating sushi, like just like truly like every single clue is there. And people were still like, are you finally going to have a baby? I bet you want a baby. You must want a baby. And I think that was always like, so I remember walking into that pretty early and still being like so young when her and Brad, like I was still young enough that I knew I didn't think I wanted kids, but I wasn't like, oh, I'm not going to do it. Like in my early 20s, I was like, oh, probably everybody does it. I'll probably do it. And then you realize like, oh, you could just make the choice not to. It's totally fine.
I was 7 and I told my parents, I'm not getting married to have kids. I was very clear on that. No, I think it's how, I obviously obsessively love Tracee Ellis Ross, and I think that she's done a lot for single women. But I think that one thing that makes her a little more palatable than the Jennifer Anistons of the world is that she talks all of the time about how sad she is that she doesn't have kids. Right? She fits a little more of that mold. And I even think when you look at a lot of the hatred and backlash that, like, for instance, Taylor Swift gets, is she's single, she doesn't have kids, and she's very powerful on her own, where, Beyonce doesn't get that same kind of backlash. Obviously, she gets other backlash, but Beyonce is married and a mom. Right. She fits more of that expectation, and you can really see it in those examples. And then that trickles down to how all of the rest of us,
of course,
are treated.
Of course.
Yeah. This has been amazing. I have one last question.
Please. I could do this all day also.
No, this has been great. So, because, one of the things that I was just thinking about a lot when I was just going through like your career and et cetera, and we started to talk a little bit and didn't really dive into as much about sort of the comedy world and how male dominated it is and how it's getting like more so. I think Mark Maron has some really good comments about like all the men who, first of all, he's the only person who truly understands me. I love that man. Very sad.
I just watched his new special. It's really, really, really good.
Oh, it's so good, isn't it? Oh, it's so good. And then I like rewatched Glow just because I was like, I just need more Mark Maron.
One of my all-time favorite shows, Netflix. How dare you take away a final
Everybody
season.
Watch Glow. Oh my God. I'm not at Justice or at Netflix for a lot of things, but cutting Glow and then canceling Chaos, I'm just like, I need to have a conversation with that board. What is going on? But he talks frequently about how the men who are constantly complaining about how you can't be funny anymore because you have to be woke. How no, you're just lazy and you just want to say offensive things. Like you're not actually doing comedy.
I really
Yes.
When I was doing the show off-Broadway, doing stand-up, everybody, like, I remember at that time, like, there were still like a lot of the men who are now like billionaires, I guess, like we're like, you can't say anything anymore. And I'm like, I'm doing 70 minutes every night talking about my period and abortions. Like, you can say whatever you want. You just have to do it in a way that isn't hateful and is funny. You can talk about anything.
Right. And that's the tough part.
And they can't do that. Part. They can't do either of those things.
They can't. No, they can't. But you know, it just made me think, and I wanted just to get some last words of advice for you for the women who are out there who are in either male dominated fields or, you know, I run a nonprofit, which is not male dominated, but Black women only raise 0.03% of foundation funding. So it sure feels like it's male dominated. Right. And so what your advice is for those women on staying hopeful, staying grounded, like moving forward in industries and a world that make you feel like you don't belong there?
I mean, it's hard. And as I've gone through comedy for so long, there have been ebbs and flows where it's felt kinder and harsher. And, you know, I find my own corners of it sometimes towards women. I think one of the things I think a lot about early on, because I think like as you get more established, like the problems change. And depending on if you do something kind of public facing or something more that people don't see, like those kinds of bigger problems change. But I think one of the big things I noticed early in comedy was there are lots of little ways that doing a job as a woman is just different from how men do jobs. And a specific example I'd like to give is like, coming up in comedy, I did open mics all over New York and Los Angeles too. Open mics all night, every night, very late. You're leaving bars in random neighborhoods at 1 a.m. to go home. And I personally was like, I feel safer getting in a cab, coming from some of these areas, coming home by myself. That is something that not one man doing comedy has ever had to think about. That is not something that they consider. That is not something that changes anything about how they live their lives. There were guys that were at bars until 4 a.m, walked home blackout drunk, never were scared at all. I'm not saying that I walk around New York scared of anything, but I understand the realities. Especially when I was in my earlier 20s, and it's real. And I always made sure that I had a day job with real income so that I could always afford those cabs. And that was like a really important piece of like, I was like, if I'm going to do this, I need to be able to do it so that I feel really comfortable. And I will feel comfortable if I know that I have the money to do things like have healthcare to take care of the many uterine issues that I and every single other woman have. And if I can safely take cabs home, and if I can be like, you know, I just, those were the things that were really important to me. So I always had a day job, and lots of men were like, I just walk dogs and then I write jokes all day. And you spend all this money on cabs. And I'm like, it is not something I'm volunteer. I did not want to work at USA Today doing data entry, but I did it because I knew that money would make the difference of me then being able to focus on the job at hand, which is showing up to the open mic and doing my 5 minutes of jokes and making sure that those jokes were good. I still had plenty of time to write. And that really made all the difference. And I think like finding the ways, like it sucks. It sucks that that's a piece of it, but it is. And it sucks that it costs more to feel safe as a woman. That is, you know, a class issue also. I think like finding the ways that you can make it comfortable for you so that you're not your work pursuing this thing you want to do that other men do more easily. So your work isn't what's in the balance, that you can make sure you can, you know, if it means like taking on like whatever the thing is. I know every job is going to have like different ways that gender inequality rears its head. For me, it was just like safety. And being out at night and things like that. And so that was something that I always was like, I'm going to take that fear off the table in any way I can so that I Because what the alternative was, I would not have a lot of money and not be able to take cabs home at night. So then I wouldn't go to those late night shows. And sometimes that's where you work out the joke that works, or you meet the person who asks you to go open for them at a theater for the first time. Like, you're anything to give yourself as much access as possible. Like, it sucks to have to do double duty. It sucks to have to take on more jobs. It sucks to have to spend more money. But if you're going to do it, like, be on an even playing field with the men when it comes to doing the job. And like, that'll give you the peace of mind, I think. And that was something that I just like personally felt early on, that I'm glad I did. Cause I don't know what I don't know what different opportunities I might have not had if I was showing up less because of the things that gender inequality do to make it harder for women to do certain things.
Yeah. Well, and that, I mean, that's such a perfect illustration of the difference between equity and equality, right? Like, all of those hidden costs that women spend, that's so much more expensive. And then we're not getting equal pay anyways, right?
Right.
But you're having to just jump over so many more hoops and barriers.
100%.
Than men to do the same thing and have fewer opportunities anyways.
Right.
Because even when you show up, you're still going to get fewer jobs.
Still the only woman in the room most nights. Still, prefer it. But then, like, it was like the joke was on all of these losers, because coming up doing comedy, you do open mics where the audience is just other comedians. So it's 19 men and me. And it's like, well, good luck when you get to an actual show where the audience is half women and you have to make women laugh, and you haven't had that practice. I know I can make women laugh. I do it every day. I learned how to make men laugh. That was what I was learning.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know if you ever saw the Magic Mike reality show, which yes is a thing. It's surprisingly amazing. I can't recommend it enough. So it's on HBO.
Okay, I have to
it's so I go to Vegas all the time. Somehow I've not seen the Magic Mike show yet, but I need to. But apparently the whole idea is that they've turned sort of the Chippendales, or like the everything on its head, and it's all about female empowerment. Mm-hmm. So they have all these guys who are auditioning for the show, and it's so great because they like bro out and they hug and they talk about their feelings, and the one like raged roid dude gets kicked out and etc. Spoilers. But one of the things that happens is they have the guys do lap dances on women. And of course, they all immediately do it wrong. And they're like, let us tell you what women actually want, which is not you just grinding your penis in her face for 5 minutes, right? And like, they actually have to learn like how to seduce women, and it like blows their minds. And it's honestly, I
gotta watch this. This is high up on my list of what to watch this weekend.
Yes, it's so great. Alison, thank you. This has been awesome. I love your work. It's been so important for women in so many ways. Thank you for being here.
God, this was such a blast. I had such a good time, and I love that you're like dedicating a space to these kinds of conversations, because like they can't just happen in the comments of a TikTok video that somebody's angry at. There needs to be more, and I just love it so much. So thank you for having me.
Well, I hope you enjoyed that. Alison is fantastic. Don't forget to follow her on all the socials, all the things, find her work. And thank you for joining. We will be doing episodes every other week for this quarter, as I'm starting to dive into some democracy work as we start this midterms year. So look for the next episode in 2 weeks. And until then, leave a comment, like, subscribe, review, all the things, and have a happy new year.